If you were to name a monster, I've most likely hunted it. I take assignments that send me all over the world, and I get paid quite handsomely for my work. Monster hunters in my league are few and far between, and I wouldn't recommend calling one of us in for something like a skinwalker, as those are below my pay grade. Occasionally, though, I'll pick up one of those jobs if work is slow. Unlike many of my fellow hunters, I'm not affiliated with any organization. I'm more like a private contractor, a private Grim Reaper, if you will. Eventually, I became good enough at my job that my colleagues started to actually call me Reaper. But you guys can call me Lance. It really doesn't make any difference to me. Nicknames don't carry any sort of weight with me. I just consider myself lucky to come back alive after each hunt. Now for the story. I can guarantee that's why you're all here. This is my most recent hunt, and is also my closest brush with death. It started like any other day. I woke up, went through my morning routine, and received the call while I was eating some bacon and eggs out at a local restaurant. The call was your typical missing persons case. A group of 4 campers had gone out into the Alaskan wilderness and planned on being gone for a week. When they didn't come back 2 days after they were supposed to, the authorities were called in to search the area. They haven't reported back since last night, and with Wendigo season about to be in full swing, I had an idea of what may have happened. Since work had been slow lately, I gladly accepted the job. I wouldn't need anything more than what I brought for most of my hunts, except winter gear, but I always liked to be over-prepared. My usual gear included heavy-duty gloves, a monkswood plant, a crossbow with 12 bolts, a 9mm pistol fully loaded with silver-tipped rounds, and 2 extra clips along with some basic rations. This time, however, I would be taking my flamethrower along for the trip, as Wendigos and most creatures in general don't care for fire. As for the monkswood and silver-tipped rounds, both the monkswood's poison and silver were lethal to anything I hunted. Something you may not know is that Wendigos tend to behave differently depending on where they live. In the lower 48, they are usually solitary, using their ability to mimic human vocals to lure their prey in. In Alaska and Canada, they completely change up their hunting tactics. What they do in these regions to the north is typically travel in groups of at least 4 or 5 and rush their prey. Whatever the reason, they are far more aggressive in these areas, and I advise you to not visit their territory from mid-October to mid-March. I felt the cold autumn breeze rustling my hair as soon as I arrived in Anchorage. The man who put in the call was waiting for me at the airport to talk in more depth about what happened. His heavy Russian accent made him hard to understand, but I got the gist of what he wanted to inform me about. The poor soul was worried to death of what may have befallen his daughter and her friends. Where things became interesting is when he told me that he didn't believe it was a Wendigo that had gotten to the campers. I asked what he thought it was, but in his words, he dare not speak its name. I won't lie, I was pissed. Maybe this poor old bastard had some meaningful information that could help me, but now I had nothing more to go on than before. A normal hunter would have decided to turn back right there. I am not a normal hunter. A massive well of curiosity overflowing with speculation opened up in my mind. I wanted so deeply to know what this possible mystery horror could be. Finally, something had reignited my passion. After years upon years of hunting the same things, I could have some change, some excitement. I wished for this to be the hunt of a lifetime. I came upon the campsite at a time where I'd have about 2 or so hours of sunlight to work with, and it was necessary to move quickly. I had to walk nearly 5 miles from where I parked, feeling watched the entire time. It wouldn't be to my advantage to be stuck out in the night with a Wendigo or whatever other monstrosities stalked the night. There is only one advantage I'd have if it made it to nighttime. Surely it would. The moon was going to be full, so my surroundings would at least be illuminated enough for me to see. If it were a new moon, even a hunter as skilled as myself would be easy pickings. Searching the campsite went as expected. It was completely derelict. Nothing in the woods around me was making a single sound. There was only pure, dead silence. Whatever came through there did made a pretty damn good account of itself. Tents were ripped as if they had been through a paper shredder multiple times and were subsequently put into a blender. Droplets of blood were everywhere, staining the surrounding trees and what remained of the tents. Somehow, where the campfire had once been looked like it was used the night before I came to investigate. That meant someone around here was alive and was also smart enough to know that the fire kept the Wendigos at bay, or at least that's how it was supposed to be. A mangled body of a man littered with large gashes and bite marks lay a few feet away from the fire. At first glance, it looked like a cut-and-dry Wendigo killing. The claw marks were consistent with previous leftovers I've seen, but the bite marks weren't. All of the internal organs of this poor man were ripped out and eaten. Even with all of that, there was no blood from his corpse. This worried me more than anything. No monster I hunted before had ever left a corpse without blood, except vampires, and they didn't devour people's internal organs. Over by the bushes, I noticed a young woman and another man in the same state as their friend. Two more bodies that appeared to be akin to those of park rangers again had the same wounds. They had to be the search party. I scouted some of the nearby trees and I saw it, the body of a Wendigo that was horribly disfigured. Its emaciated frame was completely broken and its antlers shattered. I knew then I had to either leave or stay and kill this mystery demon. Against my better judgment, I enclosed myself within the campsite, using my flamethrower to create a ring of fire between myself and the tree line. All the while, something still gnawed at the back of my mind. There were 4 campers, 3 bodies. Something didn't add up. A weak female voice spoke from a tall tree directly behind me. "You shouldn't have done that. The fire brought it here last time." I turned to see her visibly shaking. Her clothes in tatters, her blonde hair a complete mess, her blue eyes full of tears and fear. I felt sympathy for her. I had once been like her in my earlier days. It was my first ever hunt. A werewolf had run me up into an old attic, and I was ready to throw everything away. Its evil red eyes glare is forever burned into my memory, constantly haunting my nightmares. In that moment, I stood tall and became what I am now, a hunter that shows no mercy to monsters. Never show mercy. They will not return the favor. "Come up here," the girl screamed, having all of her faded life return to her in that single instant. I hesitated. Skinwalkers often deploy this tactic on sympathetic people. However, she was right. No sooner than the girl had mentioned it, I heard something barreling through the trees from my left. It was supernaturally fast. The branches snapped and the pine needles crunched. The beast's footfalls became louder and heavier as it approached. I hastily climbed the tree. It was difficult with my gear, but I couldn't afford to leave any of it behind besides my flamethrower, which I discarded for my self-preservation. Somehow, I managed to elevate myself high to a high enough branch. I guess sheer willpower coupled with the adrenaline produced by unadulterated fear can accomplish nearly any physical feat of strength. The girl made to scream as the behemoth burst into the clearing, but I was able to reach over and cover her mouth, albeit with some strain. In the clearing stood a massive wolf. If I had to guess, he was probably close to 7 feet tall at the shoulder. A light breeze blew through his thick white hair. A pair of gleaming, evil red eyes were pointed up at me from the wolf, and his face was curled into a snarl, revealing fangs dripping with a crimson-red liquid. The low-pitched, distorted howl he bellowed was beyond deafening. It was more. It was commanding and primal. The wolf paced around my ring of fire and stepped through it after one full circle. Its hair wasn't singed even in the slightest by the roaring flames. The wolf stayed until the moon had risen high in the sky, staring into my soul with its evil eyes the entire time. But once I could hear the trees rustling in the distance and the unmistakable shrieks of Wendigos. The wolf left. Knowing these monsters as I did, I knew he would come back. He wanted both of us dead, but why hadn't he already killed us? Surely he had enough strength to ram the tree and knock it down, taking us with it and providing an easy meal. The beast could have leaped up with his powerful legs and kept doing so until one of us was pulled down along with him. As I tried to think of a way out of our predicament, the girl spoke to me for the first time in hours. "Why are you here?" she asked, making the defeat she felt audible. "Some Russian guy called me to find out what happened to you guys. The better question is, how did you survive?" I questioned in return. "So Natalia's dad sent you. I lived because they died. That thing almost got me too, but it snagged my jacket instead. I've been up here for 3 days." I could feel the tears well up in my eyes. Luckily, I still had my pack with me. I pulled out a piece of jerky and a water bottle and handed it to her. Here, you need this more than I do. May I get your name? She quickly but gratefully snatched it and started eating and drinking. I know it's not much, but I won't let you die, not if I can help it. Her voice perked up a bit after having her meager sustenance. My name's Jillian, and thank you. I thought I'd starve up here. I hate to have to do this, but what do you know about that wolf? It's called the Wahila. My friend John's grandpa told us about it. I'm sorry, but that's all I know. Shit, I thought to myself, trying not to look worried, which I could tell wasn't working due to Jillian becoming more worried herself. Every other hunter that had been sent after a Wahila never came back. These are the top of the game in North America. No matter how long it takes, they always kill something they set their sights on, and now we were likely its next form of food when it came back. At that time, not a single person had ever documented its abilities. There was only speculation as to what it could do. I've seen firsthand what it leaves behind, and unless you have a death wish, never go after the Wahila. What's wrong? She asked, wanting to know what someone like me could possibly be afraid of. It's nothing, I lied to no avail. You might as well tell me. We either leave alive or we die, she declared with that same fire I used to have in my early days. All right, I'll tell you, but you won't like it. I'm one of the top monster hunters out there. People pay a pretty penny for guys like me to do this stuff, and as good as I am, as good as other hunters like me are, none of us have ever come back from hunting the Wahila. Strangely, this didn't faze her optimism. Her will to live burned brighter than the still raging ring of fire below. That lit a new fire in me. I had to get us out of here alive. Who said you wouldn't be the first? Jillian said, reaffirming my newfound resolve. God, she reminded me so much of the woman I began my hunting career for. When I was 19, we went out camping together in the Appalachians, just the two of us. A skinwalker took her from me, and I vowed to avenge her. I know it's like some overdone movie cliché, but it's a cliché for a reason. We as humans have the drive to get revenge for our comrades and loved ones. That skinwalker ended up being the second demon I killed after that werewolf. It was like a rite of passage. Killing that bastard, though, I knew there was no going back after having done it. Here I was, 7 years later, watching someone go through what I did. Maybe, in a way, my girl did come back to me. You know, maybe you're right, I agreed with her, much to her delight. Now I was determined more than ever to come back alive. I opened one of the pockets on my pack and put on my gloves. Then, I opened a second pocket and carefully removed the monkswood plant. Using what was left of the water, I distilled it, as the Wahila can smell even the faintest scent of it. I tipped my crossbow bolts with my concoction and waited. There would only be time for one shot before the massive wolf knew what we were trying to do, if it didn't already. I turned to Jillian and told her, handing her my 9mm, "Be quiet no matter what you see or hear. If something happens to me, I need you to run. Just make it out of the forest. I can buy you enough time for that." She nodded in compliance. It warmed my heart knowing at least one of us would survive the night, although I didn't want to die myself. What felt like another 2 or so hours passed. The fire had long since burned itself out, and the sun was rising. Then we heard it. A Wendigo was making its way towards our clearing. From its frantic-sounding movements, the Wahila was dead on its trail. As soon as the Wendigo broke the tree line, it would be over. Sure enough, the Wahila pounced on it just as predicted. This was my chance. I shot my crossbow. Direct hit. The bolt lodged itself between the massive wolf's shoulder blades as it eviscerated its prey. Its howl echoed throughout the forest, making it sound as if the forest itself was in pain. The potent poison would need a few minutes to work its way throughout the Wahila's massive body as it scampered away. The Wendigo was still alive, letting out its loud shrieks of anguish as it crawled to the base of our tree and began climbing. Before I could reload my crossbow, I heard the crack of a gunshot. Between the demon's eyes was a smoking hole. It no longer moved, save for a couple twitches. Jillian and I climbed down the tree and sprinted in the direction of the trailhead. The feeling of being watched was following us the entire way until we reached the last clearing before the beginning of the trail. The menacing presence that had been stalking us was standing in the center of the clearing. Stumbling towards us was the Wahila. crossbow bolt still wedged in its back. It was clearly succumbing to the poison, but even that wouldn't stop this hellhound from its endeavor to murder us. Jillian froze. I wrenched the pistol from her firm grip as the monster charged us, teeth bared, red eyes glaring and mouth frothing. One shot was all it took. It was over. The Wahila's body seized up and it dropped to the ground with a resounding, satisfying thud. We made it to the truck I pulled up in the day prior. I radioed someone nearby and told them about what they had to retrieve from the forest. At first they sounded skeptical. This wasn't the person intended to receive the message. But after some fumbling with the radio on the other end, we were given the green light to leave the area. I don't know if it was my imagination or not, but I swear I saw a pair of red eyes watching us leave.